Get episode 3 underway, shall we?
Wrestling fans, the Drama King is here to introduce you to the newest, greatest form of entertainment. That's right, because the following podcast is scheduled for one fall. Ladies and gentlemen, weighing in at amazingly entertaining, I want to welcome to the ring the greatest, most technically sound podcast on the face of the planet. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for Wrestling with Wi-Fi. Tuning in right now.
Okay, so with that out of the way, we'll dive into the fun stuff. So once again, a not so technical pod for the evening. It is Wednesday evening, and actually this is, well, I'm in New York. Everybody in Prague they're in Prague, but it's we're kind of in the midst of WLPC EU. So for those of you there who might listen to this, and judging by my statistics, there aren't that many of you yet, this might be something for you to listen to on the way home. But anyways, so I had this idea Saturday night, as the name implies and as my intro episode also explained. This is going to have a little bit of wrestling overlapping with Wi-Fi and life and everything else, and Saturday was one of those nights. Saturday was, for anybody a WWE fan, Extreme Rules in my hometown of Philly, which was pretty cool, and one of the more unique characters in WWE in the last decade came back to the company after a couple years away, Bray Wyatt. And so as he came back, as it was building up to him coming back and the reception he got, the light bulb went off in my head, and it was like, okay, so here's an idea, right? So his return is, to me, proof that you can come back, and it underscores the point that you can be both brilliant and misused, but with good leadership, you can have your potential or talents unlocked or be put in a position to succeed. And that goes for anything, really. It's not just wrestling. But so for anybody who's not a wrestling fan or who doesn't want to Google what happened with Bray Wyatt, the stories are out there. Basically, a really, really creative mind. Second generation wrestler. Him and his brother both were in WWE and apparently are both back or about to be. But was let go by the company during the pandemic as a budget cut, allegedly, because he was very expensive, even though he was moving a ton of merch and was pretty popular. But, went his own way, wanted to do Hollywood. There were stories that came out after the fact that said he was difficult to work with and whatever. But fans have been clamoring for him to come back, and, again, WWE went through new leadership over the summer. Vince got pushed out, Hunter's in charge, and so the table was set for Bray to come back, and he came back finally on Saturday. And so, and the popularity was huge. The pop was incredible. The censors had to go crazy because of, good old Philly fans are dropping all sorts of different colorful language. Just really exciting time. And, it's exciting how energized he was and how over he was. The reaction was just impressive. And again, it showed to me, number one, you can come back. Obviously, circumstances have to be different or change, or minds have to change. But that's, the one thing. And then ultimately, and I think more importantly, because anybody can come back anywhere, right? You can leave a job and go back if circumstances are different. Leadership changes, your mentality changes, you grow up, life changes, right? That's one thing. But the other component is, again, you need to make sure that you are put in the position to succeed. And, if you're a square peg, you don't go get shoved into a square, the wrong hole. You need to make sure that you've got leadership that both understands and knows your abilities, your skill set, and knows what they need to do to put you in a position to succeed. Because too often you'll see somebody who is really good at widgets and they're being asked to make gizmos. And maybe they can make gizmos, but they're better at widgets. again, it's all vague and all, conversational at this point. But I think the point I'm trying to make is, there is that happy place for everybody. And, honestly, some of you listening right now might not be in it. And here's the crazy thing, right? You might think you're in a happy place, but maybe you're not in your ultimate happy place. You're not in the happiest place that you can be in. And that's there's nothing wrong with that. But like I said, seeing him return, hearing the response, seeing how they brought him back, understanding the stories about, somebody who was pulling the strings, the creative director, understanding the character's creative genius, if you will, is sort of unleashing him and letting him have a little bit of reign as far as we understand it. I mean, things went wildly successfully well, right? I mean, you couldn't have probably booked it any better. And for those of you listening who are pure Wi-Fi people and have no clue what wrestling terms are, I apologize. I just threw a bunch of them out in terms of booking and pops and things like that. But, to bring it home to the wireless folks, to bring it home to the people in my wireless community, if you will. The point is this, we've all had jobs where we're doing things that we don't want to do. We're doing things that we're not, good at, or they're not our best skill set, right? And generally speaking, most of us are professionals, I think, or we fake it. And we do what we have to do to get the job done. But if you wind up finding yourself trudging along, it's okay to realize that you need to make a change, because there is a job out there, there's a role out there, there's a company out there, there's a manager, a leader out there who will know what to do with your skill set so that they can optimize your potential and put you in that position to succeed. And I don't just mean personally, right? They professionally, you, and by way of your skill set, help you elevate their company, their organization, right? I mean, that's ultimately, it sounds corny, but I think as wireless professionals, we need to make sure that we're not just making ourselves better, right? I mean, ultimately, that's one thing we need to be constantly improving. That's why the people are over there at WLPC enjoying the boot camps and the deep dives and everything else that goes with it. But unless you're working for yourself, in which case, I mean, it's sort of you want to make sure you do well because it's your business, but you want to make sure your company does well too. The company that you work for, the business that you are supporting, the enterprise, the organization, because that's your livelihood, right? I mean, you don't want to just be out there for yourself. I mean, you need to make sure that you're earning money, but if you're doing well, the company's doing well, everything clicks, right? So it sort of goes without saying, but I just spent a minute talking about it. So, and that's, excuse me, that's kind of where I'm at, right? At the end of the day, you want to make sure you're in that position to succeed. And if you're not, and you're not, you need to look at things and you need to evaluate, figure out, what do I need to change? Is that something that John can change by way of talking to John's boss or talking to a recruiter and moving on? Or is that something that, the boss has to change? Is that something saying, hey, boss person, I need to be put into something different. I want to transfer. I want to, you can ask for a promotion, right? But at the end of the day, realistically, you need to earn those. But, you need to identify what needs to change if you're not where you need to be. And part of that is, are you staying with what you're doing, or are you moving on? And full disclaimer, I am not talking about me. This is a completely general statement. There's no real life mirroring anything here. I am happy where I'm at. I am not at all, making a thinly veiled argument to exit my current job. I'm actually quite happy. I routinely just delete recruiter emails because, well, for the most part, they're completely off the wall, silly. But, yeah, not related to me. This is a complete generalization. And like I said, sitting there on the couch watching Extreme Rules on Saturday night, it all kind of just popped, and it seemed like a good idea. And so yeah, that's the big one for me. Kind of a quicker topic than I thought, and since we've got a little bit of time, I don't want to make this too long, but I also don't want to make it too short. It's worth mentioning now, right? So today is October 12th. If I'm really motivated, this might actually make it up to the podcast sites in the next 12 hours. I might even do it soon after clicking stop on the pod track. But WLPC Europe is going on right now. There's nothing you can do about it. You're already there, or you missed it. That's just the reality. But Phoenix, the main conference, if you will, is happening in February. It's a little earlier for 2023. It's I think it's the boot camp start. I want to say the 4th of February. It's a Saturday. It's effectively the week before Super Bowl. So boot camp Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Registration for the main conference Monday night. Main conference Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday morning, and we all get out of Dodge. Dodge being Phoenix. But the call for papers is open. This will go up before it closes. It closes on Saturday, October 15th. So if you've got any ideas for a boot camp, a deep dive, papers of any kind, now's your chance, right? You've had a month, basically. They opened up back on September 15th, but now you've got 2 days, basically. If you haven't already done something, it's kind of, you're at a point of no return, if you will, but put something in there. At the end of the day, I'll be out there, hopefully. I've put in a boot camp for Ruckus, put out to train or Ruckus RCWA class, which will be my first live instructor-led class that I will be leading if it does indeed get enough seats booked. So, hey, think of me when the surveys come out. Also have a deep dive in there, which you'll see on the survey shortly, and a couple talks. Nothing technical. That's not my bread and butter, to get up in front of a stage full of a bunch of smarter people than I am and talk technical. But, put yourself out there. That was the topic of a previous podcast anyways, but, keep it in mind, right? It's coming. You've got to put your papers in by Saturday. The surveys will be out next Wednesday or Thursday. I think Thursday. I think October 20th. I can't do math without a calendar in front of me. That'll be open for about a month. I think it closes mid-November. And then shortly thereafter, the list of, final speakers, boot camps, deep dives, etc. will be out. And then registration opens mid-December. And, we'll see what actually gets booked. The talks will be done, right? The talks will be done with this round, this coming around in October to November, the survey. The boot camps and the deep dives are driven by who registers. So, a boot camp and a deep dive can make the cut into the December slots survey, or registration, sorry. But if they don't get if they don't get paid attendees, enough of them, they won't happen. So the process is starting, but it's, until probably just before Christmas, nobody will really know for sure. I mean, some of the boot camps will be obvious. Jim Palmer will probably be doing his Antennas 101, which was a hit in Phoenix, and from what I'm hearing is another hit in Prague. Usually Jake and Ryan do the Python boot camp. I think Ryan missed out on Phoenix in February of this year, but who knows, maybe they'll be back together doing it. I know, I'm trying to think, there's usually a hacking boot camp, and Rob Boardman has a tendency to do a 3D printing boot camp, although I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know if Rob's going to make the trip over to Phoenix, since he did recently just move to Europe. But, there's a lot of popular ones. There's some new ones coming in, I'm sure. Deep dives are others. I think I just credit them all as boot camps, but the deep dives are the sessions in the afternoon after the main conference. The boot camps are the big deal. You'll see the Cisco, hopefully the Ruckus. You'll see that the 3D printing one has been on the list. The Python one has been a boot camp. But there's a few staples. All the CWNP courses are there. The CWAP, CWNA, SPDP, and so on. I think Echo usually does some stuff too. So, and I think last year Devin came out and taught his wireless adjuster course. So, a lot of good options, and it's a really good time for us in the wireless community, because again, that is coming up. Call for papers closes soon. Survey to pick what you're going to actually be able to consume in February hits next week, and registration is right around the corner. So if you're one of those few, and I do mean few that are listening to this right now that want to go, and you've never been, depending on if you're paying for it yourself, doesn't matter, right? You're just going to pull out the credit card and charge it. But if you're hoping your supervisor, your director, your manager will approve your travel, now's a good time to start talking to them about it. Registration does go pretty quickly. The more popular boot camps and deep dives will fill up fast. So if you're looking for a particular boot camp, if you're going to go for the whole conference, you're going to want to get in on that fast. If you're looking for a particular deep dive, same deal. It's not an unlimited seat count per session. So if you have something in mind, you don't want to delay too much. But I mean, speaking from experience, you can't ask on December 15th when the registration opens, because you need to have a corporate decision made. You've got clearance to make it, you've got approvals, and so on and so forth. So I'm just doing my part to let those of you who haven't come before understand kind of how the process goes. And who knows, maybe on this podcast or some other show, we'll have some people that are lined up to be, giving a deep dive or a boot camp. And I don't mean talking to myself. I do that on a regular basis on this and otherwise, other platforms. So, yeah, no, but I mean, I am excited. Like I said, I've got a few offerings up to be voted on and picked on, and with a little bit of luck, at least one of them will stick. Right, I figure it's sort of the spray and pray method. Previous years I've only put in one topic. Now I'm putting in 4 across 3 different methods to get onto the stage or into a classroom, so to speak. So we'll see. But it's it's an exciting time, and not to gloss over it, right? But it's definitely flown under the radar. It hasn't really gotten as much hype as a typical WLPC does, but they are having WLPC in Mexico, I believe in November. I apologize, I don't have the dates in front of me, and I don't know much about it, but there is a WLPC event in Mexico next month, which will be, I think it's going to be a little bit more of an abbreviated, I don't want to say abbreviated, but I guess lower key event, probably not as heavily attended, but still pretty nifty, right? I mean, Phoenix usually brings in about 300. I think February we had a touch less than that due to travel restrictions and whatnot. I think Prague has about 140 or 150 from what I've heard. So I think Mexico will probably clock in under that, but still, I mean, you're talking about 100, 150 people that are very smart about and passionate about a Wi-Fi. So what's not to love about being in a conference for a couple of days with those kinds of people? It's iron sharpens iron, and that's a heck of a way to do it. So yeah, okay. I am completely rambling, and I know that's sort of a complete 180 from where I started, but yeah. So we're gonna wrap it up again, but remember, if you're not happy, go find your happy place. If you think you're happy, but you might not be your happiest, don't be afraid to open up a conversation with your leadership or a friend and figure out how you get there. Sometimes you have to be a little bit uncomfortable in a new role before you can kind of truly find your footing. I've mentioned it on other podcasts, the Spatial Streams one probably. Some of the best advice I ever got from more than one person in IT was, don't get comfortable, right? It sounds kind of funny. It sounds sort of counterintuitive. You want to be where you're comfortable. And problem is, when you get comfortable, you get complacent. You don't continue to grow. You don't continue to learn. And then ultimately, if you're lucky, there's some organizations out there where you can stay there for forever and you can wind up retiring and you make a damn good living, and that's great. But the reality is most of us aren't in those organizations. Those are sort of, they're not common, right? I mean, you can find a big broadcasting company or a major bank or an insurance company and wind up staying there for 20 or 30 years and retiring, basically. I mean, I know people that have been in one company their entire lives, 40, 50 years or whatever, and it's crazy. But that doesn't happen often anymore. And if you have to move on, whether you've been downsized or laid off or whatever you want to call it, if you need to move on, you can't have a stagnant set of skills. And so that's one of the reasons why you want to make sure that you're always learning, you're always keeping yourself on your toes, right? And that's the whole part of where the don't get comfortable comes in. You want to make sure that, not to say that you got to be uncomfortable, I'm not saying sit on like a bed of nails, but you don't want to just get lazy where you do the bare minimum and you don't learn anything and you're just collecting a paycheck. Like it goes back to the old adage, if you do something you love, you won't work a day in your life, right? And I don't know how true that is or not. And some people will say whatever, and I'm sure there's some people in our own community, I think, that have their own businesses and are doing exceptionally well and love it. But at the same point in time, as much as I know they're loving their gigs, I wouldn't tell them that they don't work a day in their life. I mean, they're some of the most motivated individuals I know, driven, working hard. So, yeah, make of that what you will. But at the end of the day, don't be afraid to reinvent yourself. Don't be afraid to go outside your comfort zone. Don't be afraid, to push for, the right fit for you. And it could be in your organization now. You might just need a transfer or something like that. Or it could mean that you've got to go outside and, you might have loved where you were, but maybe what you're looking at outside your world is worth the risk. I mean, I think that's kind of where I was almost 2 years ago at this point. Worked for a really great company, exceptional benefits, great place to be, but, just needed to get uncomfortable a little bit. So on that note, we'll call it a wrap. I'm submitting for the night, and we will catch you on the next episode.